Good afternoon, bros. Hope everybody's having a great day. Sun's shining here in Michigan. I think it's going to be pushing 40 degrees. The creek is thawed out and water's flowing. The spirit is flowing heavy today. I've been a lot. Been in the Word a lot today. Been deep in thoughts today. So I am going to read Peter 3 to you. And, we talk about reading chapters. I read the chapter of Luke. I read the book of Luke. I read the book of Acts. I read the book of Matthew. That's awesome. That's awesome. I suggest to read a chapter a day. Meditate on it. Read it first thing, middle of the day, read it at night, whatever. But make sure you spend some time thinking about that chapter you just read and what message did you get out of it? What message did that chapter specifically speak to you? I think you're going to retain more knowledge because you're reading it chapter to chapter, in my opinion. So, chapter 3. First letter of Peter, chapter 3. Likewise, you wives, be submissive to your husbands, so that some, though they do not obey the word, may be won without a word by the behavior of their wives. When they see your reverent and chaste behavior, let not yours be the outward adorning with braiding of hair, decoration of gold, and wearing of fine clothing. Let it be the hidden person of the heart with the imperishable jewel of a gentle and quiet spirit, which in God's sight is very precious. So once the holy women who hoped in God used to adorn themselves and were submissive to their husbands, as Sarah obeyed Abraham, calling him Lord. You are now her children, if you do right, and let nothing terrify you. Woohoo! Likewise, you husbands, live considerately with your wives, bestowing honor on the women as the weaker sex, since you are joint heirs of the grace of life, in order that your prayers may not be hindered. Finally, all of you have unity of spirit, sympathy, love of the brethren, a tender heart, and a humble mind. Do not return evil for evil, as reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, bless. For this you have been called, for that you may obtain a blessing. For he that would love life and see good days, let him keep his tongue from evil. Let his lips from speaking guile. Let him turn away from evil and do right. Let him seek peace and pursue it. For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those that do evil. For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open for their prayer. Isn't that? For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open for your prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those that do evil. Oh, man. And his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is open. But the face of the Lord, boy, I tell you, I'm stuck on that. For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those that do evil. I just love that. Now, who is there to harm you if you are zealous for what is right? But even if you do suffer for righteous sake, you will be blessed. Have no fear of them, nor be troubled, but in your hearts reverence Christ as Lord. Always be prepared to make a defense to anyone calls you to account for the hope that is in you. Yet do it with gentleness and reverence, and keep your conscience clear, so that when you are abused, those who revile your good behavior in Christ may be put to shame. For it is better to suffer for doing right, if that should be God's will, than for doing wrong. For Christ also died for sins once for all, the righteous for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he went and preached to the spirits in prison, who formerly did not obey, when God's patience waited in the days of Noah during the building of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were saved through the water, baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a clear conscience, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers subject to him. Bros, does any of this ring a bell? Does any of this ring a bell? You should be practicing this, and you should be understanding this. The Apostles' Creed. Jesus was crucified and put to death and descended into hell for 3 days. For Christ also died for sins, for all, the righteous and the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he went and preached to the spirits in prison, where he descended into hell for 3, and on the third day, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God. Jesus Christ, crucified, died, buried, descended into hell. On the third day, he ascended into heaven to sit at the right hand side of God to judge the quick and the dead. Apostles' Creed, right here, Peter 1. 1 Peter chapter 3, towards the end. This just speaks volumes, bros. Volumes. For the eyes of the Lord are upon the righteous, and his ears are open to their prayer. But the face of the Lord is against those that do evil. Man. 3:12. 1 Peter 3:12. And then you get right down here. Christ died for sins once for all, the righteous and for the unrighteous, that he might bring us to God, being put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit. We just discussed that about being dead to the world. Dead in the world. You can be walking, you can be talking, but you're dead in the world. You need to be alive in the spirit. Put to death in the flesh, but made alive in the spirit, in which he went and preached to the spirits in prison. He descended into hell. That's what he did down there. He descended into hell to preach to these spirits in prison who formerly did not obey. Think about that. Did these spirits that were in hell that he preached to, did they get saved? I think he went there to save them. Why else would he go to hell? He already knew the devil. He already knew what it was. What's he going to do, go down there and have a cup of coffee with him and say, hey? No, he knew what was there. He went and preached to these spirits because he died for the righteous and the unrighteous. He died for us all. So he went to hell. He descended into hell. And he talked and he preached to these spirits who formerly, big word, formerly did not obey. So were they saved? Do they now obey God? Well, I tell you, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. To me, that's what it says. Who formerly did not obey, so that means that now they do. When God's patience waited in the days of Noah during the building of the ark, in which a few, that is, 8 persons, were saved through the water. Baptism, which corresponds to this, now saves you, not as a removal of dirt from the body, but as an appeal to God for a clear conscience, through the resurrection of Jesus Christ. On the third day, he arose, and he went to heaven to sit at the right hand of God, who has gone into heaven and is at the right hand of God, with angels, authorities, and powers subject to him. This is why I say read one chapter. Read it a couple times. I read that chapter 3 times today. One time exclusively for me and God. The other 2 times for you. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is how I do it. This is how the Spirit will speak to me. And I just learned a lot right there. I just learned a ton. And I'm going to think about this the rest of the day. And then I'm going to read you another chapter tomorrow. Because I love you, bros. And I hope you're all doing good. And I hope to see you this summer during riding season and hug you. Love you.